on YouTube.
Very nice.
All right, welcome. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Let's go.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm watching a movie. I started watching a movie this morning, and I'm pretty much taking the entire day off from work myself. So I've been a little exhausted from the last week or so here. So a real lack of sleep. Trade deadline, yay!
Yeah,
but try and catch up on some sleep, a little afternoon nap, methinks.
Yeah, that's a good idea if you can through all those sirens. Jeez Louise. Are you like right by a hospital or something?
No, just middle of downtown Edmonton. So
yeah, I know the feeling. I
got like two major downtown roads, like I'm sandwiched right between them. So
and it's like the lunchtime. It's like the lunchtime rush. A lot of the EMT vehicles are like rushing to like get to lunch. So you know they gotta get through that traffic fast.
It's very close, actually.
Yeah, maybe the sound. By the way, if like the building you're in is currently being engulfed in flames and is about to be a towering inferno, feel free to just put pause on the podcast appearance. I don't want you to burn to death.
Fair enough. I appreciate that.
Handkerchief Dynasty. Handkerchief Dynasty episode 130 would kind of be a pretty grim entry in the series, I think, if that happened. I am, as always, your secret professor, joined today by one of our favorite guests. Zach Laing returns post trade deadline. So yeah, you're just continuing to rest and recuperate. Like it probably takes all the people that are like dialed in and covering trade deadline day. It probably takes, I would guess, at least 7 to 10 days for all the like juices to come back and for you to just feel like a normal person after being plugged into the matrix so much, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of a grueling week, right? There's so much going on. And for me, it's as much as, I cover the Edmonton Oilers. I also cover the league as a whole, right? We have our website, dailyfaceoff.com, where we're posting stuff about the whole league. So I wrote articles off every trade that happened in the last week or so. And so I think I wrote almost 24 articles in the last couple of days here, just off the trade. So it's been busy, man.
What are your like? I mean, obviously, your thoughts are coming from an exhausted mind right now. But what are your like biggest takeaway, like headline thoughts from this trade deadline? Because it was a little busier than people expected it to be, right?
Yes and no. I mean, in general, it was kind of an interesting one. I mean, we saw the least amount of players moved in the last 22 years on the deadline day itself, which I thought was kind of interesting and also slightly indicative of the times, right? I mean,
right.
We're in a flat cap world. We saw a lot of deals where stuff like the David Savard and Nick Foligno deals where, there's money being moved around in ways that has never really happened before in the NHL. So it's kind of been interesting to see that transition and these teams starting to be creative. From an Oilers standpoint, it's I said it on our State of the Nation live stream yesterday, but I gave the Oilers about a C grade for this deadline. Really like the acquisition of Kulikov, although it has a little bit of potential to blow up in the Oilers' face.
Interesting. Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. But overall, I really, really like that signing. I mean, I think the team really struck out by not getting, a Taylor Hall or an impact top six forward. And I understand all of the reasons as to why Edmonton wasn't able to do it. They had some cap restraints. Ken Holland, unfortunately, isn't a very creative man, for better or worse. So he didn't seem interested in trying to juggle any of the cap gymnastics that a team like Toronto or a team like Tampa did to get the studs that they needed. But I think it's also indicative of the fact that Ken Holland maybe feels that this isn't a team that's ready to compete with Toronto, right? You look at what the Leafs did. They brought in a dynamic top nine forward, one of the better defensive forwards in the entire league, still chip in a little bit of offense. Mm-hmm. They shored up their goaltending position by acquiring David Riddick. He'll be good for them through the rest of the regular season here when they're hoping that Freddie Anderson gets back and healthy. And they made a couple other smaller moves too, like Riley Nash for some more offensive depth.
Former Oiler prospect Riley Nash,
bringing in Ben Hutton on the back end, just some smaller moves that really help add a lot of depth to them. But obviously, I think the Oilers aren't ready to take that big step to be a true contender. And that being said, I think this is the last year of it. I think next year, we'll see a different looking Oilers team and a team at the deadline, a year from now that's going to be one hell of a lot more aggressive than they were over the last week or so.
Okay, so I have to ask because you brought it up. How can the Kulikov trade blow up in their face? You mean if the conditions are met for it to become a third rounder and he walks, that type of thing, or something else?
I don't really care about the conditions being met. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if conditions are being met on one of these trades, it's probably a good thing for the team that acquired the player,
Usually.
right? It usually is.
By the way, I thought they had done away with conditional draft picks. I remember Bob Stauffer brought this up at one point too. It's like I remember that being part of the CBA negotiations.
Yeah, I do
So they must have
too.
like snuck it back in somehow without anyone really reporting on it because like at the time I remember thinking, yeah, well, I mean, of course with COVID, like yeah, conditional draft picks, they blew up in everyone's face the
Mhm.
year of COVID, right? So of course you would do away with them. But I guess the GM, I mean, I guess they just wanted them in there bad enough they put them back in at the
I
very
think they
end,
were
at the very
tweaked a
last minute
little
or
bit.
something.
I think they were tweaked a little bit in how they can be done. I'd have to look into it a little bit more because now you got me kind of curious too
Yeah.
as to why that is. But on the Kulikov deal, yeah, it's not the picks that concern me. It's definitely not the money that concerns me. It's the
Oh
fact
no. No.
that he's having a bit of an outlier of a season here.
Mm.
Analytically, you know me, I'm a big numbers guy. Analytically, he's having an outlier of a season. So, his expected goals percentage is higher than it ever has been in his career. His shot attempt share is higher than it has been in recent years. He also played with PK Subban in New Jersey, who typically can have a bit of a negative effect on teammates' numbers as well. So there's always a little bit of concern when you're acquiring a player that's having an outlier season, right? Because
And when
there's
you say outlier, like outlier in what sense? Like he's looking bad. He's looking better
yeah,
than it's a mirage. You think? I mean, but like
I mean,
because I look at the time on ice per game. Um, the style of player could potentially be like a little bit of a more playoff style player. Veteran experience, physical
absolutely,
presence. But
absolutely.
and I mean, it's not as though like, do you think they're going to try and re-sign him? If I mean, assuming
Uh,
things go decently, like assuming he
Probably.
plays well.
I mean, I think that's a little bit looking too far ahead into the future
Yeah,
right now. I
yeah,
mean, we have to see what happens. I don't think so right
yeah.
now, unless he comes in and blows the doors off and like. But even still, he's 30 years old, right? The Oilers have a log jam on defense right now, and they really need to be transitioning to some of these younger guys, which is a whole other top
Well,
conversation.
but I mean, having a Kulikov on, like, let's say, and again, this is premature for sure, but let's say he plays well enough to earn a contract around the same of what he was making this last year, or a little bit better. Let's
Mhm.
say 1.5. But if a 1 year contract, that could actually be that could actually give the team a little bit more breathing space to allow to not push a Jones or a Lagesson or whoever else into that second pairing, because like to me, like it seems like we do need one more veteran in the top four, probably in that second lefty spot. But that's just my
I
theory, because
Yeah,
I don't see anyone else breaking down the doors on the prospect side to like really make a case to be that everyday guy there.
well, I think Jones is that everyday guy there. I think he's good enough myself. Evan Bouchard is good enough to play in the Oilers top four in my eyes right now.
Mm.
The team's making a choice here this season to build their team a certain way, right? You look at all the depth acquisitions that Ken Holland made on offense and defense. He really went out and got a lot of guys that had some size and some guys that have some jam in their game. And I hate using those buzzwords, but it's true, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think on the back end, Caleb Jones is good enough to play, but I also don't hate the idea of going out and grabbing Kulikov. He'll basically, the way I look at Kulikov is he's a better version of Chris Russell,
Yeah, yeah, I think so too.
right?
Similar. I mean,
He's
yeah.
they're very similar players. They're shutdown defensemen. They're
Hmm.
strong in their own zone.
Yeah,
Kulikov, I think, can move the puck out of his zone a little bit better than Chris Russell
he's a
does,
little bit bigger,
which
and he
is
also can kind of push guys in the boards a little bit better too. I mean,
yeah,
I've heard him also described as like the Russian Adam Larson, which I mean, maybe because Adam Larson's had quite a strong year for us, makes him look a little sexier. It's just like, but I keep on thinking, especially if we're in Barry country, if somehow Tyson Barry being an Oiler long term becomes a thing, we will want some really greasy shutdown guys. to be able to take the tougher assignments for a Barry to work, I think, in the defensive core. And honestly, like I love Bouchard, I love Jones, I love all of our prospects the way a mother loves all of her children, mostly equally. I mean, fathers will love them to varying degrees, of course, as much as they may deny it because they're morally compromised. But I just don't. I feel as though in this really bizarre way, we've got these really a great set of blue chip defensive prospects, but I don't know if any of them have really. I mean, certainly the coaching staff in terms of deployment and the time on ice doesn't seem to trust that fourth guy in that lefty spot on the second pairing enough to play a Jones or whoever more than, I mean, or play Bouchard at all there, obviously.
Well, I think, especially when you look at Jones and Bouchard, they've had some inconsistencies in their games this year, right? I mean, Jones had a bit of a tough go at the start of the season, just like Ethan Bear did. Both of them fell out of favor a little bit. Bear had his concussion. He's come back. Bear looks every bit as good as he did last year and even better. Jones is starting to find his mojo now that he's seeing some regular ice time. Bouchard, obviously, he's not going to play at all here. Unless like 8 Oilers defensemen get hurt or something like that. I think it also comes down to the coaching style and the way that Dave Tippett is. Like historically, even when you look back at his teams at Dallas and in Arizona, like he's never been a coach that favors the young players, right? And that's the thing that's happened in Edmonton historically over the last decade. If you look at almost any of the coaches the Oilers have had.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right? I mean, Todd McClellan, Ken Hitchcock for his short time, Craig McTavish, pull a name out of the hat. None of them like to play younger players. And I think it's difficult, especially defensively, because you only have 6 positions there instead of 12 offensively, right?
It's really much harder to find some shelter for someone or like some easy minutes. Yeah,
absolutely, right? I mean, defensively, all of the minutes are tough minutes. Even third pairing minutes can be hard minutes at times. Do I agree with that coaching style? No, I don't. But it's the coaching style that we got right now. And I think Dave Tippett's a great coach. I really like Dave Tippett as a coach. I think he's done a really good job with his team. But there's definitely some concerns when you look at the long-term projection of the Oilers' back end right now. Because Tippett's going to have to come around on playing young defensemen sooner rather than later. Because not only do you have Caleb Jones knocking on the door, you got Evan Bouchard, and then let's not forget about Philip Broberg either. Right, sure. He's set to be coming over to North America next year, so it's going to be really interesting to see the way he fits in the plans for the Oilers long term. On the left side, I don't necessarily think re-signing Kulikov to a 1-year, $1 million contract would be a terrible move by any means, but it has to depend on what the player wants to. Right, if he asks for anything more than that, he can walk, and I'm fine with that. There's no problem with that at all. Right, vis-a-vis Mike Green last year, where he was just going to come in and be kind of a 7th, 8th defenseman, albeit, Kulikov is going to eat more into some of Darnell Nurse's minutes than not, but that's kind of where I see the situation.
I think like Larson's probably going to get a little haircut, even though he's had a really strong year. He's not going to get the 4 or 4.1 he's at right now. So, I mean, it's conceivable that we could have Kulikov and Larson both signed for under what we have Larson at now, with a little extra left over. But I mean, again, it totally depends on what the player wants. It's a very premature to be having this conversation, but I'm already fantasizing about Kulikov playing well enough that we want him around for another year because, he's a good defenseman. He's a veteran defenseman. I think that still has, like Jack Michaels said, some tread on the tire, so to speak. I wanted to ask you, and this is kind of similar. I wanted to also ask you, so I was having like a disagreement with the High Priest of Oilers Magic on our last episode, which, by the way, is live on Patreon for our patrons, patreon.com/Handkerchief Dynasty, if you want to check that out. Probably unlock that one a little bit later too, in the coming weeks. But it's like, do we have... like when I look at our forward lineup, I'm a little bit concerned that I really don't know what the line deployments are going to be game to game. And obviously the coaching staff is probably in the mode of really experimenting, trying to find some good combinations to lock into in the stretch run here. so they can hit the ground running in the playoffs. But when I look at players in our top 6, for example, like Jesse Puljujarvi and Kyler Yamamoto, who's kind of had an off year, have we penciled in some of these guys in a little too, like maybe we should have penciled them in rather than writing their names in the top 6 in pen and thinking, oh, we're just one guy away, when in fact we still have possibly some unproven guys besides that one missing top 6 winger that we keep on talking about.
Yeah. I don't necessarily agree. I mean, you look at what happened last year with Kyler Yamamoto when he got recalled. Let's not forget that he stepped into the Oilers lineup and he was a point per game player down the stretch for the Oilers as a top 6 winger, who was also undersized and is also very young.
And one of our best forecheckers as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and he still is right now, as my cat's sort of appears through my green screen.
It looks like your cat's like trying to punch you almost. Oh, there you go. That's awesome. Second cat. This is like we've had multiple cat bombs on the podcast so far. That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, Rosa loves to make appearances. Nonetheless, I don't necessarily think so because, you look at Kyler Yamamoto, he does all of the things you want a top 6 forward to do. You look at Jesse Puljujarvi, who looks absolutely incredible right now, albeit not producing offensively the way that I think a lot of people would kind of hope right now. I don't think so. I mean, I think the truth of the matter is I'll pose a reverse question. I guess I'll flip it back to you. Who else would you see in the top 6 beyond any of those guys? Because the truth of the matter is that, Dominic Cahoon, Nuge, right? Cahoon hasn't stepped up and played offensively the way we need.
No, Rory Calhoun played better for us in the 20s no.
Tyler Ennis hasn't produced the offense that we've really needed from him. But he also is a guy that I don't know if has had a fair enough of a shake in a longer term role up there.
Sorry,
either, right?
Who hasn't had a long enough shake?
Tyler Ennis.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I think in terms of like experimentation attempts, like Cahoon, we've tried 10 times. We know it's probably not a long-term solution. Ennis has had like only 3 or 4 tries, but to be honest, at this point, my gut tells me he's more suited to one of the bottom 2 lines.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, it's like you're looking at, in the past, we've seen Cassian up there. I think really like barring any unforeseen developments, I think we can give up the ghost on that idea for now. Or like an Archibald. Like honestly, like Archibald is probably, in terms of motherfuckers in the lineup, unless of course, James Neal comes out of the mists of mystery that he's been in this whole time and emerges and it's just like, yeah, I'll play on the top 2 lines, no problem. But we don't necessarily have a good reason to expect that either. It's like, I don't know. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe we should be calling up like a Ryan McLeod or something almost, just because like I don't see. I'm just worried about our forward depth throughout our forward core a little bit, not to the extent that I was in the past, and certainly like scoring and whatnot is not really an issue. It's just I feel like we just don't necessarily have enough pieces, and we're just really scrambling still to mix what we have around.
I agree. I don't necessarily think that the Oilers should be looking at bringing up any of those young guys. I think they're doing great things down in the American League right now, and in my eyes too, it's such a short turnaround. It's such a short time frame. To recall any of those guys, they have to sit for 7 days in quarantine, and then they have to try and step into the NHL where none of them have really played, in a point in time where hockey is its most intense. I mean, I don't know if they're going to come up and push the needle the way the Oilers need them to, but I don't necessarily know if it's fair to expect that from them either.
Yeah.
These are still young guys, and they've really found their mojo in the American Hockey League right now.
Yeah.
Why mess with a good thing? I mean, again, like the Oilers are a playoff team. Right, the Oilers are a playoff team. We know this. Barring an absolute nuclear implosion of
knock on wood, everybody. Knock on wood. We know it's possible.
It's possible, but it really looks like the Oilers are a playoff team here. They're going to come in and they're going to make some noise, no matter who they play against. It's probably going to be Winnipeg. And I like that matchup for the Oilers, frankly. I think Edmonton matches up pretty well. Winnipeg's got a little bit more depth offensively than the Oilers do. Obviously, they got a better goaltending situation too with Connor Hellebuck. But hey, Connor Hellebuck doesn't play very well against the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, we're 4-2 against them. I mean, yeah, that'll be an interesting series. What do you think about Montreal Toronto? Because some people are saying that they think Montreal will actually shut Toronto down. What a crazy series that'll be too.
Series. Oh,
like the country will go crazy. We might actually have like another separation referendum after that or something, depending on how messy the fallout is from that.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun series to watch. You know, like Montreal's a team that really scares me, even though they don't have that great of a record. They're a fucking hard team to play against.
Yeah, well,
they're
they got
a very
some
hard team to play against.
Totally. I mean, they got some players. Shea Weber comes to mind, that can make life difficult for people just like 5-on-5.
Mm-hmm.
And Toronto is a little scary right now, but it's not as though you can't see certain cards kind of falling out of the bottom of the tower and bringing the whole house down if things don't go just right for them. We'll see how they perform like in the stretch run too. I think like how teams look in the final couple of weeks of the regular season can tell you a lot as well. I also wanted to ask you, so do you think we're going to be seeing like people like Chiasson and Haas around after this season, or are we likely to see those kinds of players replaced with people in the free agent class, which will probably be there'll be a wide variety of guys available as free agents at bargain basement prices, most likely. But also Holm have more cap space, and he's more likely to pick up, say, a $5 million forward who would take Chiasson's place on the power play, or a $3 million third line center that would make a player like Haas potentially a little more redundant. Personally, I would try and hold on to them, but maybe he won't be able to, right? Maybe there'll be no reason to.
Gaetan Haas isn't going anywhere as far as I'm concerned. He's a very, very good bottom six forward. I think he does exactly what you want him to do. He shuts down teams defensively, and you know what? He's still got some decent enough hands that he can make a little something happen every now and then in the offensive zone. He's hard on the forecheck. He plays bigger than his body size. I think he's the ideal fourth line center for the Oilers long term. Chiasson, I mean, his spot on the power play is probably one of the most frustrating things that I've ever seen when it comes to the Edmonton Oilers. Not actually true. Far more frustrating things have happened, but the eye test when you look at Chiasson is not really that great for him on the power play. I mean, he doesn't seem to score a lot. He doesn't seem to, he seems to be always jamming the puck into the goalie's pads and not able to score down low sometimes when you need him to. But the truth is that the numbers show the Oilers are a lot better with him on the power play than off of it. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting. I think long-term, Jesse Puljujarvi is the ideal guy for that power play, net front sort of high slot bumper area.
Yeah,
he's big. He can shoot. He's just had some really, really bad luck. And we've seen this year. He's learned how to play with his body, right? Which is really, really key for a guy like him. He's got such a long reach. It really helps his game. So I think long term, that would be where I would see it. I think Chiasson's back next year in a bottom six role again. I don't mind that at all. I've always been a bit of a Chiasson apologist, to be honest. So I'm fine with him sticking around for the short term at the very least.
Do you think the Canucks should be playing a regular season NHL hockey game in 2 days' time on Friday the 16th?
Absolutely not. It's scary. I legitimately am scared for the Vancouver Canucks right now, and also scared for the Edmonton Oilers. It's a really scary situation. You heard there were some comments out of Chicago today. Jeremy Kalish, their head coach, had said that they didn't have any immediate plans to slide Adam Gaudette into the lineup. And Adam Gaudette, of course, is the quote-unquote patient zero for the Vancouver Canucks for their outbreak on the team. He was the first person placed on the list and first person officially diagnosed. So it's interesting to see Chicago, who, of course, acquired Gaudette at the deadline on Monday, saying, hey, this guy's not anywhere near being ready to play. Meanwhile, Vancouver still has 14 players on the COVID list.
I heard yesterday they had 12 players that were capable of practicing.
I
So
have no idea what the NHL wants the Canucks to do. It's coming down to a player safety issue, right? I mean, these guys have all been very, very sick with a very deadly, dangerous virus that has crippled the world over the last 13 months, as we've all seen. So,
yeah,
um, as far as I'm concerned, the Vancouver Canucks season should be shut down at this point. I don't see any reason for the league to try and force Vancouver to come back and play. Obviously, I think there's a little bit of scheduling concern. I haven't had a chance to look at Vancouver's schedule to see who they have left remaining on their schedule. But I think you just shut them down and go off points percentage and call it a wash at this point, because we're getting into a very scary situation here. What does Vancouver have to play for? Like, they're not making the playoffs, right? So,
probably
I
not.
think
I mean, they're not mathematically out yet, and they still
no,
could,
of course.
in theory. Although, again, and we talked about this on yesterday's episode of the High Priest Handkerchief or Patreon.com/Handkerchief Dynasty. But like, it just seems like do I like their chances to make the fucking playoffs now? Like, not
Yeah,
exactly.
like no, exactly. Like just taking a look, like yeah, there's no way they would squeeze in. I mean, you look at it, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of their remaining games are against playoff teams. They also play Ottawa 4 times and they play Calgary 4 times as well. So what's the point?
Yeah.
Right? The majority of their games are against teams that are out of the playoffs. Um, they're not really going to impact the seeding a whole hell of a lot in terms of where things are at in the North Division right now. So I don't know. They should shut the season down. There's too much head risk as far as I'm concerned.
And maybe one last question for you. So I mean, we're officially on, I think, Nuge watch at this point. Haven't heard much come out. There was a story a couple of weeks ago about him balking at their latest offer. I think people are actually now legitimately starting to get concerned that he's not going to be re-upped here. His name comes up in conversations as like a rental, so to speak, for this playoff run here. I think it's still most likely they'll get a deal done. What are your thoughts on kind of that situation as we're really approaching go time here?
I think both sides seem, just reading through the tea leaves, I think both sides seem fairly comfortable with where they're at right now. Obviously, Ken Holland didn't trade Ryan Nugent-Hopkins at the deadline, and as you mentioned, kind of viewed Nugent-Hopkins and Barrie and Larson as sort of the Oilers' own rentals right now. It's playing with fire, obviously. Obviously, you would like to see a guy like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who is the longest-serving member of the team right now. You want him around. He's a guy you want on your team. And I don't think any of the options in free agency would be better than Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in terms of taking the money you could potentially pay him and giving it to somebody else. I don't think anybody's going to have as big of an impact as Nugent-Hopkins would. And also, it's kind of an interesting strategy to go that way, right? I mean, you're definitely playing with fire. I think, to me, I don't have any gut feeling that things could go bad in the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins discussions. I think it's just a matter of not if but when it comes to him. Barrie and Larson, that's where it's going to get really, really interesting. Realistically, I think Edmonton could let both players walk and be fine. I really do. I really do. Yeah, I do. I've
Replace them internally. Replace them with kind of half human, half cyborg or half robot cyborg type being. Like I mean,
here's what I would do.
Clefbaum? You expecting Clefbaum back?
Clefbaum's as big of a question mark as anybody too long term. We should know more in July about his status right now as an NHL player in the future. This is my throw it at a wall and hope it sticks. You look at Barrie and you look at Larson, and let's say, just in theory, the two players' cap hits combined to be $8 million. Okay, so cut it up however you want, right?
Yeah.
Say it's Barrie 5 and Larson 3. however you go about it. Personally, if I had that money, I would be taking that $8 million and backing it up to Dougie Hamilton's house and saying,
Mhm.
hey, Doug, we have some really nice museums and art galleries here in Edmonton.
It's true, and it's
But
true.
I'm sure
They're doing great work at the Edmonton Art Gallery these days.
they
Curations,
absolutely are.
fantastic. That's what I hear.
Beautiful. I would be backing the Brinks truck up to Dougie Hamilton's house if he hit free agency.
Interesting.
He is a elite top pairing defenseman in the NHL who does absolutely everything you want an NHL defenseman to do. And he's a right shot, and he's big, and he skates incredibly well. He would be I mean, you put him on the top pairing with Darnell Nurse, and the Oilers are an instant contender in my eyes. Like
Interesting.
that's how big of an impact I feel like he would have on the Edmonton Oilers.
You think
Obviously,
he's an $8 million free agent this summer?
absolutely, I do. Absolutely. Yeah, he's really good. He's really worth it as far as I'm concerned.
Any
Obviously,
concerns about the number of teams he's bounced around on?
No, I don't. I mean, 3 teams. I gotta pull it up, see how old he is here. I'm not concerned by that. I mean, I think there's been some poor asset management by some of those teams as far as I'm
That's
concerned.
also true. Yeah.
Right. He's 27 years old, 593 games, 332 points. He's got 33 points in 41 games this year.
Yeah.
He is the real deal in terms of number one defenseman in the National Hockey League. So no, I don't have any concern about the number of teams he's played for at this point. But I would happily have him as have him play for Edmonton as the 4th team. So I think you're going to get more value out of Dougie Hamilton at $8 million than you are for Tyson Barrie and Adam Larson at $8 million. Not only that, but it also allows Ethan Bear to play on the second pairing in against maybe a little bit of softer competition. And on top of that, it also would allow Evan Bouchard to slide in on the right side and make his debut as a full-time NHL player next year, right? But on the left side, say, hey, maybe you want to re-sign Dmitry Kulikov to a 1-year contract. He can come in and play second pair lefty alongside Ethan Bear. And then, left side, you sign a shutdown defenseman to play there alongside Evan Bouchard in free agency. And then you're looking at a really deep defensive group right there, right? Because I think Evan Bouchard absolutely is a full-time NHLer next year, and the team needs to prepare for that. And then I think you can use a guy like Caleb Jones as a trade chip or as a, something I'd be really curious to see is if Edmonton would say, hey, Seattle, if you take James Neal or if you take Zach Cassian, we will give you Caleb Jones. Right? You look at it's what Minnesota did in the Vegas expansion draft. Is they said, hey, we'll give you Alex Tuck to take Eric Holla so that you don't take Matthew Dumba. It's the same sort of a thing in a way, right?
Yeah.
It would allow the Oilers. I think I don't know if I necessarily see Jones projecting long-term on this team as they once did, which I hate to say because I think he's a really good defenseman. I think he's going to be a really good defenseman in the future.
I think he is too. I think he might be a little further away than we thought, but I would be shocked if he was not an NHL regular, like 16-minute-a-night defenseman in like 2 years, 2 or 3
absolutely
years. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think with the way it's you also got Philip Broberg, who's a bit of a question mark next year too. Can he take that next step into the NHL? He's probably destined for Bakersfield.
Yeah, I think they're going to move him. I think Holland's going to have him in Bakersfield for sure. For next year. There's also always the chance that a defenseman just blows the doors off in training camp. Like Ethan Bear kind of came out of nowhere. The way a lot of 3rd or 4th round or 5th round or 6th round defensemen could come out of nowhere. So,
a guy that's really impressed me too is Billy Legs. I think Legason's looked really good in terms of playing a defensive style of hockey. I again, trying to read through the tea leaves. I don't think he and Bouchard would be a regular pairing next year, right? It'd probably be like Chris Russell on the 3rd pair or something.
I don't think you can graduate more than one rookie defenseman a year, really.
Yeah.
Maybe I think trying to do 2 at once is really, really hard. I think you're spot on when you say we need to be prepared for Bouchard to be a regular next year.
I think you
Yeah.
build the team around that a little bit. As weird as it is to say, you build your defense around a third pairing right shot defenseman.
Mm,
But Bouchard is the real deal. He's a very good defenseman, and he should be playing this year. He should be a
yeah.
regular this year.
Yeah.
It's fine that he's not. He still had a full season of pro hockey in Sweden, right? But I think you're going to get more value out of Hamilton because in saying that too, he's an elite defenseman on the top pair. But Ethan Bear isn't Dougie Hamilton. So even if Bear is playing with Nurse in the top pairing next year, you're not getting as much value. And then on top of that, Tyson Barrie has his defensive deficiencies, and Adam Larson has his offensive deficiencies. So you're basically taking Barrie and Larson and just combining them into this one, this one asset and a very
Totally.
good one at that. So will it happen? Who the hell knows? I think I'm a little bit more on the optimistic, wishful armchair GM side of things than not. But I also
Yeah.
think the team needs to start looking at being creative and looking at some of these legitimate options that'll make the team a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's all really, really true. Yeah, I could not agree more. Just final thought. Any other what's the most interesting story you're following league wide? I know you got your eye on the whole thing, the whole shebang, the whole kit and caboodle. So what's blowing your mind right now,
Yeah,
NHL wide?
it's Vancouver right now for sure.
Yeah.
It's been Vancouver. It's local to an extent. Really interested to see what happens the rest of the way for them. I think another interesting story that I kind of been quietly keeping an eye on is what the hell is going on with the St. Louis Blues. They seem to have fallen off the rails a little bit here as of late. Oddly enough, around the time that Jordan Binnington signed his contract with the team. I don't know if there's any correlation there or not, but they're an interesting story to kind of follow right now in the Central Division.
Yeah, for sure. And so really not that far removed from that cup run. It's interesting.
Yeah, they're not.
All those years of grasping and struggling and clawing their way, Ken Hitchcock hockey style, to finally get there to the promised land. And it seems weird. Yeah, it's just a little bit wacky to see.
I think the Pietrangelo loss really hit them harder than they were expecting it to.
Well, how could they not be expecting it to? I thought it was crazy that they didn't hold on to him or do everything they could. I mean, maybe it was out of their hands, but
yeah, I think it might have been a little bit out of their hands. So
yeah.
Also very interested to see what happens with Taylor Hall the rest of the way. As I'm sure anybody who's follows me on Twitter has seen over the last week. I was banging the Hall to Edmonton drum pretty hard. But really hoping as a story, as a player, as a man, that Hall has some success in Boston this year.
Yeah, you know what? Me too. I think it would be nice to see after the trials and tribulations of Buffalo. Okay, well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk today, Zach. You're one of my favorite guests. Always good to talk to you. And I'll be thinking of you as I stroll across this sunny beach behind me here, barefoot in a moment as I eat my lunch.
Very nice.
I'm going to do a walking beach lunch.
I'll be heading to all of these Wendy locations here in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Of course, as we all know, there's no Wendy's in Toronto.
Yeah, and be sure to review the frosty quality at each. I want just use the matrix, the shared Excel I sent you. You should have permissions to edit that now. So just add your comments in the appropriate fields.
Fantastic. I'll also be adding something in too for the combination of fry and frosty, because that's also a very important a tool to judge a Wendy's location.
One of the most robust flavor pairings out there, akin to a fine filet mignon with a nice Merlot. And where can people follow you, Zach? On Twitter? You're at
ZJ Laing on Twitter.
Cool, brother. Okay, well, I'll let you know when this is out, and we'll hook it up again real soon. And we'll be curious to see what happens on Friday, man. And hopefully we're not shaking our heads, but I have a feeling we might be.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for having me, man. It's always a pleasure to join you.
Cool. Take care, bro.
Peace and love.